So big news dropped today that could shake the crypto markets. And we're talking about the jobs report that just came out and how that might impact Bitcoin here very soon. So we'll go ahead and take a look at things as far as the chart goes. But really, I want to focus in on that private sector of only adding 77,000 jobs today. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll break it down. But things are already shifting right now. We do have a big day on Friday that could impact the direction of crypto in Bitcoin in the coming months, and I'll break that down specifically. So if you're curious of how that impacts your crypto and Bitcoin, whether the market could go up or down, stay tuned, keep watching. I want to make sure that you subscribe to the channel as well. If you haven't done that yet, click the red subscribe button below. I'm also going to be giving away some Bitcoin. Yes, some Bitcoin, not a whole Bitcoin, but $100 in Bitcoin for followers who actually subscribe to the channel and who comment on the video. I do have different channels in different languages because I do like to spread the word and educate on crypto and Bitcoin across the world, whether it be in North America, whether it be in Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, Hindi, India, wherever you're listening this to, just make sure that you drop a comment below on the channel that you're watching this. And I want to make sure to give out 2 subscribers over time. So that encourages you to comment on the video. And that actually just really helps the community talk a little bit more and grow. So that's important. So make sure that you subscribe and leave a comment below. So we'll go ahead and take a look. Now, Bitcoin, as far as this goes, we'll get into the job information. But we did talk yesterday how things weren't looking good because we had the bump up in price when we talked about the crypto reserve Sunday. Then it got, then it was just like news that in the end, it really didn't mean much because in order for that to pass, it has to be voted on. So price dumped back down to around 81K after pumping to 95K. And then we pumped around 10% again in the past 24 hours. And now we're taking a slight dip. But it's a very kangaroo up and down volatility right now. But we could get some clear direction, hopefully, in the coming weeks. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Now, as far as the news reports, you're going to see about how there were 77,000 jobs in February added in the private sector. Now we're talking about the ADP, employment report that talks specifically about the number of jobs in the private sector. So this isn't the non-farm payrolls that we'll see on Friday, the big job report that comes out that really is going to probably impact what happens in the future. Now, this is a hint of what could happen. Now, we missed the mark by quite a bit. As far as the estimates go on Yahoo, it talks about how there was estimates of around 140,000 jobs to be added in February. And the report came out that's only half that. In January, there were actually 186,000 jobs added in the private sector. So that alone is significantly less than in January. And yes, this actually will impact the crypto market and Bitcoin, the dollar, and stocks. And so we can go ahead and get into that. But in the end, things could be slowing down. That's what it means, right? So people are starting to worry a little bit about the economy. And because of that, what you're going to notice is that you're going to notice that the dollar is down, the DXY, the dollar index. Basically, what that means is that the dollar is down compared to other currencies and other assets. All right. So the market's reacting with the job report. Weak job markets could actually help crypto, though, as we look ahead to the data. Now, like I said before, the big report is going to come out. The U.S. non-farm payrolls is going to come out on Friday. That's called the NFP. Unlike ADP, NFP covers all jobs, basically, right? Public, private, it's massive. It drives markets. As far as the number, it's definitely going to be a lot bigger than 77,000 because we're looking at a far bigger picture when it comes to the job report. But what about 2 weak reports in a row? What can that do? But if it does beat expectations, meaning that if there are more jobs than what's estimated that came about in February, then that could actually be a good thing, potentially for the dollar, could maybe help with the economy a little bit. But really what we're doing is we're shaping the story right now. That outlook could be down. Now, how does that impact and tie into Bitcoin? As I said before, the dollar is taking a hit And with the dollar index, the DXY, I already told you that it tracks the dollar against major currencies. And a weaker dollar, that could actually signal for people to look at other assets to get into as a hedge, right? Bitcoin. We have looked at Bitcoin as a hedge to the dollar for a long time now, financially, as hard money, as a store of value. And some people will be looking to get into other assets such as that. A weaker dollar can actually boost Bitcoin, believe it or not. And we've seen that in the past as far as overall if you're holding the euro or yen, a weaker dollar means you can buy more Bitcoin, especially if you have a better currency. That pulls in global buyers as well. And the big thing is the inflation worries. And this is where we're going to get into how this impacts overall markets with the Federal Reserve and FOMC, that a weaker dollar stirs inflation worries. And so when that happens, what do we think is going to happen as far as the inflation goes? So that's when the Fed steps in, they cut rates, etc. We'll go ahead and take a look at the Fed's remaining 2025 meeting schedule. Now, I've already said before in videos this week that the Fed will meet in March this month. Now, the next meeting after that is not until May and June. And typically during these meetings is when they publicly decide and talk about cutting rates and what they're going to do, the next step. Now, as far as cutting rates, interest rates, that's going to impact the economy because in the end, that ends up being a decision that will end up pumping stocks, Bitcoin, crypto, etc. So, and how do the job reports today impact that? Well, if we're having a weak economy, if that's impacting inflation because imports and everything and exports, things are costing more, a weaker dollar in general, right? That's your purchasing power. If it's weaker, things cost more. So in the end, one thing to combat that is cutting those rates, right? Boosting the economy in a way that will help people. So with that said, that is a potential that we've seen. Now, in this article from Forbes, what they do talk about is that there was really nobody predicting for a rate cut to happen in March, okay, this month. And people were thinking that perhaps the estimated first rate cut for the year would be in June. Now, how does a weak job report impact that? Now we're seeing some people say that there is a 70% chance for a rate cut to potentially happen in March. And that could be good for Bitcoin, that could be good for crypto and good for the stock market in general. And this was an unforeseen thing. Nobody expected the job market report because, again, to come out like this for the fact that it is down 50% from what was estimated. So because of that, it's shocking to people, right? People are surprised and shocked that the job market's weak. So if the Fed steps in, and many times he's come in, Jerome Powell has said, hey, the job market's fine and we're doing good. But I don't know if he's going to necessarily be able to say that this time because the latest job report is down for the US. And hey, what's going to happen? Is is the Fed going to step up? Are they going to cut rates? And how is that going to impact Bitcoin and crypto? And we've seen in the end that typically when that happens, that tends to be a bullish trend that happens in stocks. People go risk on. People look at other assets. Again, if the dollar's weak, you're looking to get in other assets, especially crypto, especially stocks, those types of assets that people like to put their money into instead of leaving it in a weak dollar. Because if you leave your money in a dollar and you leave it in the bank, what happens to it? Inflation happens to it. It's weak, the purchasing power. When you can instead take those dollars, put it in Bitcoin, put it in another asset that goes up in value. In the end, you're not losing out because of the inflation from that. So a big thing to watch is the upcoming FOMC meeting here in a couple of weeks. And that's when we're going to learn whether or not the Fed is going to cut rates. And as I said today, this number of 77,000, this private sector number of jobs is basically just kind of a glimpse of potentially what's going to happen Friday. And based on that, Friday's going to be a big day. So we want to make sure to watch Friday what that job count looks like. And based off that number, that's probably going to be a clear indicator of what's going to happen. And if it's weak, if it is a weak number, I expect Friday for potentially the stock market in Bitcoin to potentially move up, because what's going to happen is that people are going to see a weak job market as an indicator that the Fed could potentially now cut rates here in a couple of weeks, and they're going to try to front run that. And so, if you know, anytime you trade markets in general, whether it's the stock market, whether it's Bitcoin, news tends to travel, and people tend to buy the rumor and sell the news. And so, if we do know that the Fed will potentially cut rates in the coming month, people are going to be looking to get into those assets such as Bitcoin and stocks, as I said earlier. Just be on the lookout for that. We want to look at a number that is down. If it's even close to what it should be, I would expect the markets remain choppy, and but in the end, right, there is hope that the Fed will cut rates come March here in the next few weeks, because we want to see the price of Bitcoin, go back up. There's a lot of other good stories as well we won't really get into. I did talk about in last video how really we're doing okay with the Bitcoin in the Bitcoin market, crypto in general, that being down 20 to 30% on a pullback like this in a market is really typical. And so we do know if you're in altcoins though, that have hurt quite a bit. So in order to get those altcoins up, really what we need to see is we need to see Bitcoin trend up. We need to see risk on assets trend up. And then people will, of course, put their money in those more risky assets such as altcoins that have, while they're volatile, they also have more upside as well. But that's really it for me today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about what's happening with the job market, how that impacts the dollar, how that impacts the Fed and rate cuts, and then how that ends up impacting your Bitcoin and crypto holdings, how we need to watch in the coming week about the job market. And if it's down, to understand that it's likely people are going to start putting their money into Bitcoin, crypto, into stocks potentially, for the rumor of a rate cut come in a couple of weeks from the Federal Reserve. So, with that said, I am Rager. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you should do so, because I am giving away Bitcoin every week to people to one winner, of course, who reply and comment below on the video. So make sure that you leave a comment, subscribe, and then I'll give you more updates this week as we know of what's going to happen with Bitcoin in the crypto market. All right, you guys trade safe, and I'll see you soon.